My name is Daniel Voss, and I am the human ambassador to the Galactic Council. I want to tell you about the day everything changed for my people. It is a day I will never forget, and I think you will understand why once I explain what happened. The Galactic Council meets in a huge round room called the Rotunda. The walls are made of a strange white stone that seems to glow softly. 11 different alien species sit around a giant circular table, and each one has a floating screen above their seat, showing information about their homeworld and their fleet of ships. Humanity had only been part of this council for 6 years. We were the youngest species there, and everyone knew it. Before I continue, let me explain a little about myself. I grew up on a small farm in the countryside, far from any big city. I never imagined that one day I would speak for my entire planet in front of alien leaders. I studied history and languages in school, and later, I joined the diplomatic service because I wanted to help people understand each other. When Earth was invited to join the council, I was chosen to represent us because I could stay calm under pressure. That skill would soon be tested more than I ever expected. The other species in the council were very different from each other, and very different from us. The Skrull were tall and proud, with skin like polished stone, and eyes that never seemed to blink for long. The Vashtu were quieter, calmer, and much older as a civilization, having explored the stars long before humans had even discovered fire could be controlled for cooking. There were smaller species too, with soft voices and gentle manners, who often stayed silent during arguments, and only spoke when something truly mattered. That day, I stood in the middle of the room, waiting to present information about our newest warship, a vessel called the Resolute. I felt proud of it. My engineers had worked for years to build it, but as soon as the image of the ship appeared on the big screen, I heard laughter. Not one person laughed. Almost the whole room laughed. A tall alien named Skarn, who had 4 eyes that could move separately, spoke first. His voice was smooth, but his words were sharp. "Ambassador Voss," he said, "is this a joke? Is this some kind of historical display? Surely you are not telling us this is an actual warship." I tried to stay calm. "It is fully operational," I answered. "It was finished 8 months ago." More laughter followed. Even the quiet species, the Vashtu, who almost never showed emotion, made a small clicking sound that I had learned meant amusement. I understood why they laughed. Next to their ships, ours looked small and simple. The Skrull had massive ships covered in armor that could bend light around itself. The Vashtu had huge carriers that could fold space and travel great distances in minutes. Compared to that, our ship used simple engines and metal armor. It was, by their standards, very old-fashioned. For 6 years, humanity had been treated like a child in this council. We were loud, we were new, and everyone thought we were far behind in technology. Some species had even suggested, more than once, that Earth should accept protection from a stronger species. That always sounded polite, but it really meant they wanted control over our planet and our resources. That day, Skarn brought up the idea again. "Perhaps Earth should consider a protective alliance," he said. "For your own safety, of course. We would only need a few bases on your worlds to keep you secure." I felt my hands tighten at my sides, but I kept my voice steady. "I will think about that offer," I said. "But first, I have something important to show the Council. It is something you should see before we talk further about protection." Skarn's eyes narrowed. All 4 of them focused on me at once. "Another old warship design?" he asked, clearly enjoying himself. "No," I said. "Something much older than that." I gave a small signal to my assistant, who stood near the wall. She activated a special transmission that we had prepared 3 days earlier. We had labeled it as a cultural history presentation, so no one had questioned it. No one imagined that a young species like ours could be hiding something enormous. The screen in the center of the room flickered, and then it changed completely. Instead of showing our small warship, it showed star maps of a region far beyond Council space, an area their sensors had always marked as empty. But it was not empty. 40,000 years ago, I began, and the room grew very quiet, the kind of quiet that happens when people sense something important is coming. Before most of your worlds even had life that could think or build, there was a great event in this galaxy. Your oldest stories, myths, and legends contain small pieces of it, even if you never understood what they meant. Some of your ancient ruins, the ones you could never explain, come from that time too. The image on the screen shifted again. Now it showed the shapes of massive vessels, floating quietly in the dark, far from any star. They were unlike anything built by any council species. Lines of soft light moved across their surfaces in patterns that did not match any known form of energy. "We call this the Sentinel Fleet," I said. "We did not build it. We inherited it, long before recorded history began. It has been waiting out there for tens of thousands of years, doing exactly what it was created to do, watching over our system and staying calm unless someone tries to threaten it." For the first time since I had entered the rotunda, the Vashtu ambassador stopped his quiet clicking sound completely. "This must be false," Skarn said, though his voice did not sound as confident as before. "It could be a trick, a fake signal, designed to protect your reputation." "Then send a probe," I said, "an unarmed one, of your own design. Send it to the coordinates I have shared. See what happens when it reaches the boundary marked at just over 11 light-years from our home star." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then, quietly, the Vashtu ambassador agreed to do exactly that. It took almost 4 hours for the probe to reach its destination. I spent that time sitting in a small viewing room near the rotunda, watching representatives from many different species try to look calm, while clearly waiting for the results, just like I was. When the signal finally arrived, the entire chamber went silent. The probe had crossed into the marked region. For about 10 seconds, nothing happened at all. Then, gently, without any sign of aggression, soft light surrounded the probe, almost like a careful hand closing around a small insect. It was some kind of scan, checking what the object was and why it had come. After a short pause, the probe's systems that were not essential were quietly turned off, and it was left drifting peacefully in space. Along with that, a single message was sent back, translated instantly by every console in the rotunda, so that all species could read it clearly. The message said simply, "Leave." "That," I said into the silence that followed, "is what happens to a harmless, unarmed probe. I would rather not think about what might happen to something else." Skarn said nothing. For the first time, all 4 of his eyes focused on the exact same point, and he did not look amused anymore. "We are not showing you this to threaten anyone," I continued. "Humanity does not control that fleet. We cannot command it. We cannot turn it off. We can barely communicate with it at all, even after 60 years of trying. It listens to something much older than our entire civilization, some purpose we do not fully understand. All we know, from history passed down through countless generations, is that it becomes active whenever Earth faces real danger, and in every recorded case, it has always succeeded in keeping us safe." I let that idea settle over the room for a moment, before continuing. "So when this council speaks about offering us protection, please understand something important. We have already been protected for longer than we have had radios, longer than we have had airplanes, and far longer than we have had space travel. We built ships like the Resolute not because we needed them to survive, since we survived here for tens of thousands of years before building a single starship. We built them because we wanted to stand at this table as something more than a species simply hiding behind an old gift we did not earn ourselves." The Vashtu ambassador spoke for the first time in many minutes. His voice sounded unusually careful and thoughtful. "Why show us this today?" he asked. "Why not continue letting us believe you were weak, and use that surprise against anyone foolish enough to challenge you later?" I thought about his question seriously before answering, because it deserved an honest response. "Because I would rather have your friendship than your fear," I said. "And because I am tired of watching this council treat a young species as though it were a small and unimportant one." After that meeting, everything slowly began to change. The talk of protective agreements stopped completely. No one suggested placing alien bases on our worlds anymore. Instead, something surprising began to happen. Requests started arriving from different species. They wanted trade agreements. They wanted cultural exchanges. They became curious, and even respectful, toward the small, young species that had quietly let the galaxy misunderstand it for 6 years. A few weeks later, Skarn asked to meet with me privately, away from the noise of the rotunda. I expected him to be angry, or perhaps embarrassed about the laughter that day. Instead, he seemed thoughtful, almost humble in his own way. "I have spoken with my leaders," he told me. "We would like to learn more about Earth. Not because we fear your fleet, but because we misjudged your people, and that was a mistake we do not wish to repeat." I appreciated his honesty. It would have been easy for him to stay proud and say nothing. Instead, he chose to admit that he had been wrong, and that small moment of honesty meant more to me than any formal apology could have. Over the following months, small groups of scientists from different worlds began visiting Earth. They were curious about our history, our art, and our way of living together despite our differences. In return, some of our own scientists were invited to study technology from other worlds, technology far more advanced than anything humans had built alone. It felt strange at first, to be seen as equals rather than as a species to be managed or protected. But slowly, that strangeness turned into something closer to pride. I still do not know everything about the Sentinel fleet, even now. No one on Earth fully understands it. It does not answer our questions any more than it answered that lone probe sent by the Council. It simply continues waiting out there, far past the edge of familiar space, doing exactly what it has always done since long before humans built their first city. But I have stopped thinking of it as a secret weapon. Instead, I think of it as a promise. A promise made by people who lived long before the pyramids were built, long before written history began. A promise that no matter what challenges came later, their descendants would never truly be alone in the darkness of space. The Council stopped laughing at our warships after that day. They understood, finally, that appearances can be deceiving, and that a young species is not always a weak one. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the ones who built that ancient fleet. I wonder who they were, what they looked like, and what kind of world they lived in. I wonder if they ever imagined that, tens of thousands of years later, a small ambassador from a young, curious species would stand in front of an entire galactic council and use their gift not as a weapon, but as proof of something deeper, that humanity was never truly starting from nothing. We were simply continuing a story that began long before any of us were born. I hope that one day, humanity will build a fleet of our own, one that does not need an ancient promise to be respected. I hope our achievements will speak for themselves, built through our own effort, our own creativity, and our own courage. But until that day comes, I am grateful for the quiet guardians, waiting in the dark, watching over a world they chose to protect long, long ago. And every time I remember the laughter in that room, followed by the silence after the message appeared, I smile a little, because I know that the galaxy learned an important lesson that day. Never judge a species by the size of their newest ship. Sometimes, the greatest strength is hidden quietly in the past, waiting patiently until the right moment to be revealed. I often think back to that farm where I grew up, so far from any star map or council chamber. I think about how strange life can be, how one quiet person from a quiet corner of a small planet can end up standing before an entire galaxy, holding a truth that changes how everyone sees his world. I did not build the Sentinel fleet. I did not choose to inherit its silent watch. But I am grateful, every single day, that I was given the chance to share its story with those who once believed we were alone and unprotected. That is the story of the day the Galactic Council mocked our warships, and the day Earth quietly answered with something far greater than any weapon: history itself.